Welcome back, movie lovers. I am Josh.
And I am Chris.
And I'm Jamison.
And with our powers combined, we are
Garner Brothers Movie Lovers.
I'm Jamison. I'm actually these guys' cousins. So
Yeah.
sorry, I'm not brothers, but
technically,
to it,
He is still a Garner.
yeah, I am still
Brother.
a Garner. Yes, our fathers are brothers. So,
and he has sisters, which makes him a brother.
ooh, there you go. I like that.
We're still Garner Brothers.
We'll keep it with that. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Hi guys, it's Josh here. We're going to try something a little bit different today. I did a drawing of Morbius and figured I would try to use it in our video somehow, so let us know what you think about it. And if you like it, maybe we'll try it again in the future.
Today, we're talking about Morbius, the living Dracula. There is a Nobel Prize-winning scientist who has a blood disorder that is terminal, and he uses his super science genius to make a cure using vampire bat stuff. And he becomes a Dracula.
It was directed by Daniel Espinosa, and it stars Jared Leto as Morbius, and it stars Matt Smith, and it stars Jared Harris and Tyrese Gibson, and it has a score by John Eckstrand, who has scored it with Batman Begins soundtrack from Hans Zimmer.
Could have sworn it was Hans Zimmer.
Pretty close.
My expectations were very low at the very beginning. To be honest, I had kind of no desire to see it. But because I love movies, and I had no idea who Morbius was going to this movie. But I did do some research, so I could at least know who the character is,
Yeah, you
what
knew some
the
stuff I
drive
didn't know.
is.
My
and the
Morbius
characters.
knowledge is limited to Spider-Man,
Spider-Man
the animated series.
Yes.
And I remember him in that show and thinking he was kind of cool or whatever with his blue hair. But I too had... I don't like Jared Leto very much as an actor. Or a person.
Dare you.
Or as a
He's slapped. You should be Will Smith slapped.
Are you part of his weird cult where he's
No.
Jesus?
Oh, no.
But I'm not a huge Jared Leto fan. I have heard nothing but bad things about this movie, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Wow.
I thought it was, as far as Sony superhero movies go, pretty good. I think it was better than either of the Venom movies.
But it is not on the level of, the Tom Holland Spider-Man series. Those are so good.
Yeah.
This was better than I expected, for sure. I mean, it's got a 16% on the tomato meter. I looked at some of the review headlines.
It has what on the tomato meter?
16.
I had no idea. That's
I think
bad.
the audience score is going to be high for this.
It'll be higher than that.
Oh, yeah.
probably. But for the 10 people that go and see it, this movie is not going to do well. I
don't think so. Chris, tell them about what you talked with me earlier, about how the world has become tricked by MCU superhero movies.
We were just having a conversation before the movie started about how... so I want you to think about how many superhero movies that have been made outside the MCU you would consider really good movies.
Let's ask Jamison.
Jamison.
Ooh,
Name some really good superhero movies outside the MCU. How many
Now,
can you
let's
think of?
clarify as well, like you did with me, top tier MCU. We're talking Endgame, Infinity War,
okay.
Winter Soldier,
Guardians.
Guardians of the Galaxy, the best of the MCU. Okay, give us superhero movies not in the MCU that are as good as the best MCU films. Go.
The closest one that I can think of was the Zack Snyder Justice League. You guys seen that
You
one?
put that in that league?
Well, in compared, because the MCU has dominated the way we watch movies. It's changed our perspective on even how movies are presented. So there's a lot to it, but the closest thing I could think of would be that. Anyway, that's the first one that comes to my mind. Anyway, you said you had 4. Chris, you said you had 5.
Yeah, we were thinking, of superhero movies were a different thing before the MCU. A very different thing. And this movie feels a little bit more like one of those, like pre-MCU superhero films to me, than a post-MCU superhero film. But even post-MCU, outside the MCU, I don't see the same kind of quality in DCEU films, for example. Like, I can't... there are none of those that I like as much. Oh, yeah. So I'm thinking Spider-Man 2. I'm thinking Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Like, those, to me, are on the level with the best MCU films. And I think the MCU has kind of spoiled us for superhero movies. Like, the average quality, even, of an MCU film is so much higher than so many other superhero films that have come out. Think of Daredevil and Elektra and Catwoman and Green Lantern.
Almost all of the X-Men movies.
Almost all, yeah. So here's my thing with Morbius. I don't have a big problem with this movie. Like, looking at a lot of the critics and stuff have been really complaining about how bad it is, and I was expecting it to be a total train wreck. It was fine. Like,
This is, in my opinion, a mid-tier MCU movie.
I would agree to that. So going into this, I had no idea that critics are just ripping it apart. There are a couple things that I do have big gripes about. The biggest gripe that I had was cinematography. I can't stand the shaky cam. So the bad guy that he's fighting, a lot of it was just like this jumbled mess, and then all of a sudden it would like slow-mo for a second, and then back jumbled mess. You had no idea what was happening. You had no idea
even
what
during
was
the slow-mo,
happening.
because you don't know what's happened before the slow-mo.
Yes.
Suddenly there's this slow-mo. It's basically this like Matrix-style wraparound shot for a second, and then it keeps going. But you have no idea what's going on because you didn't know what they were doing right before that shot, and you don't know what happens right after that shot. The final battle between the two main, the big bad and the big good, it's indiscernible.
Yeah. It got convoluted with all of the visual effects too of the Nightcrawler. I don't know,
Yeah,
like
why
smoke,
is he all
like,
wispy like that? I understood the rest of what was going on with him, but the wispy smoke that was coming off of him, didn't really get that.
The only time it did make sense is when he felt the wind current. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
that's why they did the whole thing, to kind of show you that he's got some weird thing with wind.
One of the things that I really like is that because he is a scientist, he knows the human body. And he was able to quickly pick up on any of these powers, any of these things, and it was just kind of enjoyable to see him
Scientifically try to discover what his abilities were and stuff.
Yeah,
It was
and
kinda cool.
So it was.
I also loved the scene where he's fighting those like thugs trying to steal their little lab where they're making fake money.
Yeah.
And he uses his like knowledge as a doctor of like how to hurt someone. It was like he's like, do you know how many bones are in the human hand? Let me show you. Like he's describing them as he does it. Like he knows the human body incredibly well, and I thought that was kind of a fun little violation of the Hippocratic Oath.
Okay, so yeah. So speaking of that,
Fun little violation.
how do you guys felt that he did with that struggle of being a vampire, needing blood, but yet taking that oath not to kill or harm anybody? Do you feel like he did a good enough job in portraying that?
I think he was fine. I wasn't like super blown away with Jared Leto here, but like I didn't hate him in this movie. I usually hate him.
I feel like this is actually the most normal character I've ever seen him play, which is weird when you consider he's like a vampire. But he seemed like
mean
a Dracula. My mistake. He's a Dracula. Yeah, so I just felt like he seemed pretty normal, and his character, I don't think they wrote him a character that he could really sink his teeth into.
he could really ruin
Nice. Oh gosh. Jared Leto's a weird guy who takes weird roles, and I feel like they didn't give him a weird role. He seems like a very like, I don't know.
Maybe he learned his lesson after Joker and like sending creepy packages to everyone and then having the worst performance of all time. He was like, maybe I'll just do what they tell me this time.
I don't know.
He
was fine. He didn't. I thought he did fine.
Yeah, he did fine. As far as like battle within himself to like not consume human blood and stuff, I don't really know if there was like artificial blood. That must be something from the comics. It wasn't anything in the animated series that I remember. That was a useful tool that they had there.
What about his best friend Milo?
You know, he's in the movie.
There's a really great dance number.
I leaned over to you and I was like, does this not reminisce of emo Peter Parker doing a little...
Yeah, there you go. I think that was...
It was totally that. It was totally
what
that.
What the heck is he doing?
Yeah.
And you were like...
Who's he performing for?
Is he alone?
And he was. He was alone.
He was totally alone. Who are the two detectives?
Tyrese Gibson.
Can I just say the, most... I say this respectively, but, waste of space character Tyrese was. He literally did nothing the entire movie except walk in and be like, hey, check out those cameras. And literally his partner did everything. It's like, here, let me get into the cameras. Oh, here, let me talk to the witness. Oh, here, let me do this.
And the other guy was the funny one, too.
Yeah.
He really didn't have anything to do.
No,
which is not the actor's fault. It's totally the script
the writers.
Yeah.
I did have a thought about that character. There is a very obvious scar on his neck.
Yeah. And then you saw that brace on his arm or whatever. At the very end, when that massive hole was there, he had his sleeves rolled up and he had that massive, brace. Obviously from...
See the mechanical arm inside of the laboratory at the end of the movie, too.
You mentioned that.
See that.
So you think he's a comic book character?
I think he might be another character Morbius fans would recognize.
Okay.
And so he's there to tease that he might be some... I don't know. Maybe he's no one. But they do this in superhero movies all the time. Sony does it ad nauseum with their Spider-Man movies, especially the Andrew Garfield ones. Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2 has every Spider-Man character from existence in there. It's insane. But they're all just side characters that you don't know about. Black Cat's in that movie.
Mm-hmm. I saw
There's also... Well, there's a bunch of people in those movies. But
I have another non-spoilery gripe about the movie. I feel like this movie has some pretty significant pacing issues. Mm-hmm. I think it's 105 minutes long. Pretty short for a superhero movie, especially compared to the Batman that we just saw, or any Marvel film.
It didn't feel incredibly short.
No, it didn't. I feel like this movie feels simultaneously rushed and slow. I feel like the jump between scenes is almost never understandable. It's really hard to tell how much time has passed between this scene and that scene. So it feels like it's kind of jumping too quickly.
That's
from
true.
scene.
The scary scene in the hallway that I liked was such a strange transition. We didn't even know where they were.
We didn't know that was the same building. It just seemed like this weird abandoned hospital.
They could have done that in a way
else
to make it clear that was in the same building that Jared Leto was in.
That's what I'm talking about. But then within each scene, I felt like there was a lot of exposition and not a lot of action, and not a lot happens in each scene. So you're jumping from scene to scene too quickly, and then within each scene, you're not doing anything. And so at the same time, to me, a lot of this movie felt rushed and boring. And so, I don't know. It wasn't super boring, but there were some scenes that I thought, this is kind of dull. There's a lot that doesn't happen in this movie.
It's time for Good, Fine, Bad.
Good, fine, bad.
Yeah, that was a load of poop.
Chris, Good, Fine, Bad.
Fine.
Jameson.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, it wasn't the best, obviously. Have our gripes. But honestly, in my opinion, the good outweighed the bad. So, good.
Yeah, I think I'll probably say... I'm going to put it at Food. It's right in there, right in between.
It's a new category.
I think, because we talked about with our last review that good is kind of our level of we recommend you go see this. I think there are people I would recommend to go see this, but there are plenty of people I would also say you don't need to see this. Anything else?
Man.
Anything else?
I think I would actually change how I felt about the movie from good. What were the ratings again?
Good, fine, bad.
Fine, bad.
I'd say fine.
Okay.
I'd say fine, because if you're looking for an entertaining movie to go see, sure. It was entertaining. any diehard fans, yeah, lower your expectations. Pretty well. I felt like the movie in of itself was rushed. That there was so much that happened, but so little to walk away from. And so, yeah, just fine. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to talk about.
Sounds good. So there you have it. Morbius, the Living Dracula. Go see it if you want. But, like this video. And subscribe if you want to, if you're new and you thought that we were not super horrible.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Comment below. Just like, what do you guys
What did you
think?
guys think of the movie?
Yeah, I want to hear what you guys thought, because I feel like this movie is going to polarize people a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does help to have really lowered expectations, so we might have rose you up a little bit to hate this movie when you see it. Sorry about that. After he kills those mercenaries and starts showing restraint, it doesn't really, it's not super obvious that he's doing that until you're introduced to the other guy. Which, I really liked the way that they revealed that he was...
Yeah.
He had taken it. Because it's not obvious. And also, when we're talking about, scenes and shaky cam and done poorly, the hallway scene at the hospital is done with love. And it is way better than anything else.
That was great.
So the motion sensor lights go off as you go underneath them. And you see this girl in the hallway by herself, and the motion lights are following her as she walks down the hall. And then you see a light in the background go off. She turns around, and she sees somebody crawling around on their hands and knees.
Even
and
on walls and ceilings
and then
stuff
continues,
like that.
continues to be like,
hello?
What's your name? But then, as she turns around and starts running, the lights continue following her, but the lights in the distance are catching up to her. And it was done super cool. It was a really good horror movie-esque, scene. Then he, eats her, and she dies. It's a happy ending to a great scene.
When I saw the figure in the background, all of a sudden going from the walls to the ceiling in the background really quick, I was like, mm-mm. And when you can get an audience member to do that, to be like, nope, nope, you did it right.
But you think it's Morbius, but it is revealed a little bit later in a pretty clever way, and I respected that. I thought that was good.
I feel like that scene gave us an idea of what this movie could have been.
Yes!
If the movie had been all of that, everybody would want to see this movie. Everybody would be talking about this movie. But instead, we get this one scene that's everybody's like, wow, that scene. And that's it. The rest of the movie is
How is it that Sony is going after villain-centric films and they haven't gone full horror on one of these? It's a vampire villain! What are you doing? Make a horror movie!
I agree.
Well, the thing is, they're trying to make these movies, they're trying to make anti-heroes. Right?
Well,
their whole thing is, let's get these villains.
I'm so done.
It is kind of interesting what they're trying to do. In Spider-Man No Way Home, the multiverse opens up, and people who know who Peter Parker is are brought to Tom Holland's universe. So I guess what happened is villains who know Tom Holland's Spider-Man were sent to other universes and then didn't get brought back?
I don't know. I think we're overthinking this. I think the bottom line is Sony wants their villain back because he's going to be part of the Sinister Six. And so they shoehorned him in with the, just saying, hey, this happened at the end of the last movie. You didn't know about it, but now you do, and it happened, and you can't complain about it because it's there. I do want to get back to your question about Matt Smith's character, though. His friend Milo. I have a problem with that character. I feel like they maybe were trying to set up how vicious he could be in that scene where he's fighting the kids outside when he's a little kid. He hits that kid with his crutch and then he jumps on him and starts punching him afterward. I think they were trying to establish that maybe he's a bloodthirsty human or something. But his whole life, he's been sick. he's got, you know, this one friend, Jared Leto, and he's got Jared Harris has been taking care of him the whole time. And suddenly he becomes a vampire and he's like super, super evil. And he just wants to kill everyone, including all the people that he's loved all his life. I did not buy it.
I did not at all. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Please don't.
Well,
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think that they did do some things to try to describe. I mean, he does mention that the doctor, who is their dad, so he always felt like he was playing second fiddle to Michael Morbius in the size of this person. And there was also other inclinations where he said that he viewed his disease. He hated the rest of the world for being able to live normal lives when he had to die and slowly die. He talks about it in the scene when he kills those guys in the subway, and he says, we've had to live with death hanging over us our whole lives. It's their turn now. So he's held this grudge his whole life, whereas Michael Morbius just was trying to figure out how to cure it. But it was never something he was like, that really affected him horribly until he was infected with a monster vampire who, when Morbius became the monster vampire, also killed like 6 people. But he tried to stop it, whereas the other guy just kept going. So he's had a different mindset about everything his whole life, and when he's been given the same thing, it was easier for him to just naturally give into it and Morbius to fight it.
I do like that. I felt like they could have done a better job executing that.
I agree.
Because
I
at
agree.
the beginning, when he was like, so what, you get to live and I get to die? I felt pity for him. Like, I felt so bad for him that and then like, Morbius was like, get out, and just angry at him. And at that moment, I was like, dang, it really sucks for this guy. And once he became the vampire, it didn't feel believable that someone like that could all of a sudden just mass murder anybody he wanted to. And he did. And that's the biggest gripe that I had with him. It's like, I'm sorry, dude, I don't feel anything for you at this point now. And
the worst part for him that was the least believable for me was at the end when he slow-mo tries to javelin Jared Leto to death, and then Jared Leto pins him down with his bat powers, and then he's like,
bats.
you can't kill me.
You gave me
And I
my
was like,
name.
What? You've been trying to kill him this whole movie.
I know,
Of course he
right?
can kill you.
Of course. And then when he was like dying, it was just like, all right. Like,
The rest of
I
it
just
didn't
felt
really bother
weakly.
me, but I did feel like they probably could have fleshed it out a little bit better than they did. I do agree that that's probably the case, but I felt like they tried, and the efforts that they had there were fine.
I have one other spoilery gripe for this movie.
Let's hear it.
Just at the end. So he has this like vampire killing serum that he makes, right? So he's gonna kill his friend with it, and he has 2. And his girlfriend's like, you're gonna kill yourself with that. And he's like, yes, I am. I made this, and I'm gonna take it out of here. And she's like, don't do that. And then he takes off with his stuff, and then he finds out that Jared Harris's character is dead. And then he makes it back to his girlfriend just in time to watch her die, only she doesn't, because she bites him and gets his blood.
She bites him too. Maybe that's why.
I think that's what it was.
In the comics, he can turn people sometimes. Yeah. And I wonder if that's why, because she got some of his blood.
I thought she bit him.
She did.
And
I thought he went for the jugular.
He did after.
Okay.
After.
Okay.
So yeah, they have this kiss, and she like bites his tongue, and then she gets blood in her mouth. And so apparently you don't need a DNA injection into your spine. You can just get someone's blood in your mouth. We've already established that with Venom 2. But as long as that happens, then you become that character. So yeah. But he doesn't know that she's alive. He thinks she's dead.
Maybe.
And then he goes and kills his other buddy. And then there's like no mention at all. Like there's no struggle. Do I kill myself? Do I not? Like that
yeah,
is, like,
they probably
totally dropped.
should have had one of
And
those
at
get
that point,
destroyed or something.
If everybody's dead but him, what is his reason not to do it? Like he wanted to take that science out of the world. That was his plan, and like it set it up to be like some kind of conflict at the end, and then it's just nothing.
Yeah.
Not mentioned, nothing done with it. Now he's just gonna fly around in the sky, and then she wakes up and she's a vampire now. And
I would agree, because even to my original comment at the beginning of how you guys felt with that struggle of him being doctor and vampire. I didn't feel like there was that struggle. Even there at the end of just like, do I accept who I am or do I try and banish? There was none of that. I felt like through the movie. The whole movie was him trying to control those urges. That was it.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
And the movie doesn't fix it. Like, I mean, he's already decided, I'm not going to... I know that I can't keep drinking artificial blood. That's not going to, be a long-term solution. I refuse to drink human blood, and so I'm going to kill myself. But then the end of the movie, he just flies away like a vampire, like a Dracula.
Yeah.
And like, this conflict is no longer a conflict? What? Like, what's going to be the next movie? Is he going to be subsisting on artificial blood and somehow it's okay? Or is he going to be drinking human blood and he's decided that's okay? Like, I don't feel like when you set up a character with a beginning and a middle and an end and you have a conflict in there that he has to deal with, you got to do something to close the door on that conflict, and they never did.
There was no resolution. So it just kind of left me feeling like, by the end of it.
It's like they forgot about the internal conflict.
They forgot.
And they just focused on the external conflict. And once the external conflict was resolved, now the movie's over. You forgot to resolve your other conflict.
Yeah, they should have had... I mean, really easily, they could have broken the other one in the battle. They could have had one of them break, and he was only able to use one.
There you go.
Fixed it.
Yeah, there you go.
But they didn't even do that. That would have been the dumbest and easiest way to resolve it.
Or... like, he hears her waking up and realizes, I'm going to have to shepherd her through this world and not let her become a murderer, so I can't kill myself right now. Like, give him any reason not to do it, but it doesn't give him any reason. Like, as far as we know, he had every reason to kill himself, and he just chose not to for reasons we don't know.
Yeah, they didn't... Yeah, you're right. But in case we don't see you,
good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
What is he directed?
Life?
He directed Life?
Yep.
That's
Are we
incredible!
talking the board game?
It looks like a scary